talking about work-life balance and how to actually achieve that. So lofty goals, but we're getting a good start with 2022. My name is Hannah Curtis. I am with the North Metro Small Business Development Center. If any of you are not familiar with the SBDC, we offer free one-on-one consulting to small businesses, as well as some educational programming like these sessions that we do today. So we're joined by Nancy Barnett, who will be our presenter today. Nancy is one of our lead consultants and has been for years. She also works with the Denver SBDC and owns her own business, a couple of them. So she's very knowledgeable. We're very happy to have her with us, and we'll be walking us through some great material as well as some more interactive exercises. So we're excited to get into that. So Nancy, I will turn it over to you.
Well, hello, hello, welcome everybody. If you want to turn your pictures on, that's great. I like to see faces so I can see who's there. I don't care makeup or what backgrounds are or any of that kind of stuff. If you don't have to, of course. My name's Nancy Barnett. I've been consulting for the SBDC. There's some faces. I've been consulting for the SBDC for about 10.5 years. My background was in corporate America. So I spent a good percentage of that, mostly on the corporate training side. My last position, I was the director of training for AAA for about 14 years. And a friend said, wouldn't it be great if? And we just jumped. And needless to say, we needed help. And the SBDC has been, we were clients, and they helped us tremendously. So today we're going to talk about this whole idea of work-life balance. We talk time management. Those are all different keywords for people. In the chat room, if you guys can, we're going to do a poll, right, Hannah, real quick. Give me an idea if you guys are, just answer the poll so we can get an idea of who's here and what they're, what they're doing, kind of thing. And then this class is probably going to be a little different. I like interaction. And so put questions in the chat room. That's okay. Hannah will tell me because I won't pay any attention. She'll interrupt and she'll tell me because I get involved in the class and the presentation itself. One of the things that I want to say from a personal standpoint, the reason that I taught this at AAA, I taught it, and they made it one of their core classes, actually, although it was a 3-day course, so you're not going to get all of it. But they found it valuable because if their employees can't take care of themselves and aren't ready and able to work, that hurts productivity and everything else that goes with it. And they were wise enough to see it. One of the reasons it's close to my heart is personally, I had to face some situations in my 30s, okay, with family. I had 4 kids and a husband and a full-time job. And my actual job was I was an education director for a large vocational college in California. And my job was to keep people in school. And people in school who have life falling apart usually don't do very well. So I helped everybody else, and then found myself in a position where I couldn't handle everything I had going. And I got sick and I had to change some things. And so what I'm going to share with you are some of the things that I learned in that process that have helped me grow and prosper. Okay, so I had technical difficulties today. This morning I woke up and nothing worked on my computer as well as my email. So Hannah's going to handle the slide presentation for me and help me from that standpoint. So I love what you guys are doing. Some of you are looking at starting your own business, which means that you're adding something new to what you're already got going, because evidently what you're doing wasn't enough. And so how do we incorporate all of that and still stay sane? Okay, and that's pretty much what we're going to be looking at today. So Hannah, you want to go ahead and start the,
Do we want to launch the poll first?
yes, let's do that.
Okay, here
Take a
comes
second.
the poll. So it's just there's only two options, so it should be pretty quick, but while you're answering that, I will also quickly mention, we are recording this session, and I'll send out the recording and the slides later today. So if you need to refer back to any of the material, you'll have access to that. So don't feel like you need to scramble for notes or anything like that. But it looks like most of you have responded, and we have 50, oh wow, a 50-50 split. 50% of you already own your own business, and 50% are thinking about starting your own business.
Wow. Okay. So the key here is, how do we find that middle ground, right? How do we find the balance, right? And you can go to the first slide, Hannah.
Okay, one second here. Okay, you're
And
seeing
go
that.
past this one, we go to the next one.
Okay.
So when one of the questions is, can you even do this? Is it even possible, right? Well, the answer is yes, it is possible. But then the next question is can you make it, is it easy? And the answer is no, it's really hard. The answer is, oftentimes we say, for instance, we look for tools, the think time management. We say, oh, I'm going to get another app, or I'm going to, make my to-do list every morning. And we end up with 32 things on our to-do list. And we look at the end of the day and we have 2 crossed off, and we don't feel very productive. Okay. And that's because we have to do a bigger change. We have to change our mindset. We have to change how we think about things. So that's what we're going to work on a little bit today. So Hannah, go with the next one. So when you think about it, you've got 24 hours a day, right? Everybody's got 24 hours a day. Does anybody have more in this class? I doubt it, right? So why is it that there are some people who seem to be able to do it all? They seem to have the job, the kids, the husband, spouse, whatever, okay, kind of thing. And they still have time to spend with their families. They still have time to do all of the different things that look like they're involved in their community. They always seem to be volunteering for something. Okay, how do they do that? They've got the same 24 hours. The difference is their priorities. You have to set up your priorities before you can figure out how you're going to spend your time. Instead of looking for that quick fix that's going to make it better, because there is no quick fix, okay, from that standpoint. So let's go to the next slide. So the good thing is, if you're setting the priorities, who gets to make the rules? You do. You're in charge, okay? The bad news is you're in charge. So, you just have to really think about, I now have to make the rules. I can't depend on something else to make the rules for me. I have to make the rules. And that really changes it. One of the things I want you guys to have is a pen and paper close, because I'm going to ask you some things to maybe do a couple of exercises through this. You'll find I kind of roll with it and see what happens, okay, kind of thing. But I really want you to start thinking about priorities, okay? So let's go to the next slide, Hannah. So where this comes from, and a lot of what I talk about, is a book that actually changed me and changed how I thought about things. And it's been around for a really long time. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's written by Stephen Covey. He built a huge enterprise on that book and wrote several others on leadership and all of that. And he really got down to the brass tacks, and he broke everything down to basic 7 habits. And we're going to talk about a couple of them today. But it really, you have to begin with the end in mind. And one of the ways, that's one of them ones they talk about. And one of the things he says is pretend you get the opportunity to attend your memorial service at the end of your life. What do you want to hear people saying about you? What is important? Because that's the end. Everything else is said and done by then. What do you want your legacy to be? Do you want your legacy to be she worked 24 hours and everybody hated her? No. Okay. So what do you want your legacy to be? So start thinking about that. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be remembered for? And you all have businesses or are thinking about starting your business. I want you to also think about the end in mind for that business. What do you want that business to be known for? What is its purpose? Just like you have a life purpose, your business has a purpose, a life purpose as well. And you're intertwined. There's no space in between. So I want you to think about that as we move on. And one of the ways, so go to the next slide, Hannah. Or did I just do it?
The game of life.
Yep, I did it. I didn't mean to, I did it. Okay. So some things are working still. So in looking at this, I explain it by using the game of life. Okay. Have some of you heard of that game? It's an old one. It's been around forever. We used to play it with our kids on Wednesday night, family night. Okay. So the game of life, if you're not aware, is a board game. And it basically set up a scenario. And the scenario was basically you're starting your life and you get a car and you are in the driver's seat of your car. And then depending on the cards you draw and how you start, okay, determines if you have a relationship, get married or whatever, or how many kids you have or whatever. And those people go in your car too. Okay, and then you make a choice. You make one big choice in the beginning. And you say, am I going to focus on a career or am I going to have a college education? Am I going to college? Okay, and depending on that choice, means you got school debt over here, okay? Or it means on the other side, you may have to start from the bottom and go up, okay? Or an apprentice program, whatever it is, okay? But every choice you make in life has consequences. And that's the whole purpose of this game. And so I want you to pretend we're playing life, okay, for a moment. And understand that every decision we make has consequences, okay? So let's talk about what that looks like. So you start with your life goals. Okay, what's most important to you? I want you guys to take a minute and I want you to write down what are your life goals. You're not going to have to share them. Okay, no one's going to see them. I just want you to think about them. Okay. So this is actually the beginning of something called a personal mission statement. Okay, which we don't have time to get into today, but it's the beginning of that. How many of you have noticed that when you really want to do something, you find time to do it? We all do. You know, there's a party we want to go to or an event or something. We find time, right? And yet other times we say we don't have time. And we all have time. We just, what are we choosing, right? So think about this. For every action, there is a reaction. That's physics. Okay. When it comes to human beings, we have an added little thing. In between action and reaction, we have this thing called choice. We have the ability to choose our reaction. Yet how many people and how many of us have said, and if anybody says they haven't said it, we need to talk later. Okay, I didn't have a choice. I had to do this. Anybody ever said that? And in reality, we all said it, okay? And in reality, we do choose. We make choices every day. We make choices where we're talking to a client and just we'll use the term difficult or interesting, okay? And they're saying things that give us some pause. Well, we need to take that pause and we understand we choose how we're going to respond to them. That's where our control is. It's not in them, it's in us. We cannot control them. I've tried with 4 children and failed miserably. Okay, so what are you going to do with that space? You're in control. Once you start realizing you're in control to responses, things get a whole lot easier. So let's go back to our life car. Okay. I want you to visualize this life car. Now, have any of you ever allowed somebody else in the driver's seat of your life? We've heard it. My life would be so different if I hadn't married John or Sally or whoever, right? If I hadn't done this, this wouldn't have happened. Okay, if I hadn't met so-and-so, this wouldn't have happened. When we do that, we abdicate responsibility. And that's a human thing. It's just a human thing because it makes it easier for us. So when we look at this life car, and now we've got these tires. And these tires, can you imagine going down the road of life with a car that had a all-wheel terrain tire, a truck tire, a bicycle tire, and a flat tire? How well would it be going down the road? Somebody, you guys can talk to me. This is a small enough class. You guys can take off the mute and you can talk to me. Tell me what that is.
Impossible.
Say that, Sarah.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. And yet, how many of us try that? Because we don't have things in balance. And we don't even notice we have things in balance. Okay. So one of the things I want you guys to think about is we're going to give those tires, we're going to give them names. Sarah, Hannah, can you change the slide for me? There we go. So it only did it once. It's not doing it again. So in this car, we're going to call each one of these tires physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. If those 4 things aren't in balance, guess how you're going down the road of life? A little wonky, okay? A little uncomfortable, a little slow, okay? So now we're going to talk about those individually. So next slide. There we go. So physical. So how many of you made a New Year's resolution that said you were going to start taking better care of yourself physically and do better, eat better, go to the gym more? Anybody do that? I see Samantha did. Okay. And why do we make these resolutions on January 1st? What's that whole, how did that come about? It came about because it's a new beginning. It's a new year. It's time to set things up. For most people, how long do those resolutions last? Anybody want to make a true confession?
I'll confess that I haven't started yet.
Well, you're not behind now, so that's good because you haven't started yet. So you haven't made any mistakes on that area, right? So
Right.
the idea is if we don't take care of ourselves physically, how do we take care of anything else? Again, going back to, I have 2 businesses. I also consult for the SBDC. I also still like a husband. Okay. And we've got kids and we got grandkids, and because they were productive. Okay. So we got lots. I got lots going on. And so how do you stay healthy to do it? Because what happens, somebody tell me what happens to your business if you get sick? Somebody talk to me. It's okay.
Nothing. Nothing
So-
happens.
What is it?
Nothing happens.
Nothing will happen. And if you worked really hard to establish a business and then you get sick, what happens? Because most of you are your business, at least in the beginning. And it won't be able to go on without you. And then how will that affect you in so many different ways? Financial, a lot of different ways. Okay. So you need to think about what can you do every day to help you do better physically? And it doesn't necessarily have to take a lot of time. Why do people wear Fitbits and Apple Watches today? Anybody? I got one. Yep, I do too. It's on my wrist. Okay. And why do we do that? Why do we have that on our wrist? Why?
I use it as a reminder.
That's exactly it. And then what do I do? What do you do sometimes when you get reminders? Let's be truthful.
Occasionally they get ignored.
Yeah, occasionally they get ignored. Okay, absolutely. But at least I have a reminder, right? And then I post in there on my Fitbit, I post some other health things, right? Because I can. Okay, all of that stuff. And it tells me where I'm at. It tells me I've done something today. Think of your body as an engine. If it is not running on 8 cylinders, what is happening to the rest of your life? Do any of you know where we can like trade in bodies and get new ones? Like, is there any new business starting out? Is there an app out there that's doing that for us? Okay, kind of thing. No, we're kind of stuck with what we got. Okay, so how can you devote a half hour or an hour a day to just you? To just taking care of you? Is it a walk? Is it, what is it? Is it going to the gym? That works. I go swim at the rec center. Okay. Now, do I have to be there at 6:30 in the morning? Yes. And some days I get up and I say, yeah, I'd really like to not, like, it's cold out there. Okay. But yet once I get my body there and I do 120 laps in the lazy river, okay, how better do I feel for the rest of my day? And I use that time walking around in the water with the current. That's what I do. Walk around in the water with the current. Okay. And it's my Zen moment. And I plan out my day. It's not like I'm not working. Okay. It's just that my body's moving at the same time. Okay. So whether you're on a treadmill or whatever you're doing, whatever your thing is, okay, what is it? And then finding ways to get regular and getting sleep. Okay, sleep's really important to us. Sleep is when we recharge. I think some of you have found probably, and those of you who are just starting a business will find, okay, that I can tell you my brain just doesn't shut off. Okay, I dream business stuff. Now that's scary. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. Okay, but I think about things and I wake up sometimes and I have a piece of paper, a pad by my bedside. I write stuff so I can go back to sleep. Okay, and I don't know if that's because everything else is shut down and now your brain's open to this. I don't know why it happens, but it can happen. But you need to get enough sleep. Sometimes you need to turn off Netflix early. Okay, to sleep, whatever it takes. Make a plan. What are you going to do? Your health is your best resource. How are you going to protect it? We protect our money, we protect other things that we protect our house, right? We get insurance on our house. We think that's really important because it is. And yet we disregard ourselves. So think about it. You're number one, not number two. You're number one. Okay. So the next slide I want you to think about is this whole idea of mental stuff. Okay. So the mental piece is, how are you exercising your brain? And some of you are exercising your brain because you're here today. Okay. Learning something new does what? Exercises our brain. So brain's like a muscle. If the brain doesn't get exercised, guess what gets slow? Guess what gets less than? Okay. So how are you going to stay mentally fit? You get to choose. Remember, you're in the driver's seat. You get to choose. So are you going to take a class? Are you going to read a new book? Are you going to do whatever flips your switch? Are you going to sit down and just do a few puzzles? Are you going to do whatever? Do what you want, okay? But exercise your brain. Learn a new hobby. Sometimes you will find that if you focus on something different other than your business, guess what you're sharper at when you do your business? Okay, so think about what you're doing every day, 30 minutes, whatever you want to give the time zone, 30 minutes to you because you're valuable, okay, to sharpen one of your most important assets, your brain. Okay. And then the spirituality thing is not religion. This is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about you. We're talking about your purpose, what makes you feel valuable, what you want to contribute to, taking time for just a quiet space. Some people, and there's tons of ways people do this. Some people do it through meditation because it's just quiet, right? It's just, so they zone down to that quiet space. Some people do things like yoga, or they just take a walk in nature, or whatever it is. But it's kind of like this, where you just think about you and think about your purpose and think about what's important. It's about why are we here? What's the meaning of your life, right? What's your purpose? Why are you here? Why are you doing what you're choosing to do? One of the things that I think, and I teach this all the time, but one of the things that I think is really important, and I think we neglect it, is we start a business, right? We got an idea and we're going to do something. I've worked with people over the years who they were working, they had a job, and they said, I want to leave my corporate job. Okay. And so they would come to, they're going to start a consulting business in the same industry they just hate, right? Or they think, gee, I don't want to start my business on my own. I have some cash here. I'm going to buy a franchise, because a franchise does all that legwork. Okay. And it's a proven model, and I can just walk in and I can do it. And so they sometimes invest $200,000 in a franchise. And then 6 months later, they find out they hate making sandwiches. That's a problem. Okay. And the problem is, and the reason that happens is you need to design a financially viable business model that matches the lifestyle you want to live. If there isn't a match, guess what you have? Right? That's all part of this. What is that? What is your, because this is going to feed into the integrity of the business you set up. It's going to feed into everything. So take time just to be still. Take time just to get close to you and what's in your head. Figure out the way you want to do it. Doesn't make any difference. Okay. But just find it and do it on a consistent basis, whatever that is. And really start thinking about this match between you business and you personal. Okay. Any thoughts on that piece? Samantha, I saw you nodding your head. So any thoughts on any of this part?
Well, I'm in the process of writing my business model, and I think maybe subconsciously I was trying to do this, because that's a lot of the reason why I'm trying to start my own business, is maybe to align a little more with this kind of thing. But I guess I've never said it out loud or thought about it specifically. So thank you. This is really helpful.
Right. And when you think about it, so when I said earlier on, you set up your personal mission statement, right? And then when you set up your business mission, what should match? They need to be in alignment. But if you haven't done the personal first, how do you know to make the, and something you said, Samantha, is really important, is you've been thinking about it naturally, but you haven't put it down. I find tremendous value in writing stuff down, because then I can't lie to myself. When I write it down, it's like there, right? And so I can't even begin to tell you how valuable that exercise can be for you. And the next one I want to talk about, the fourth wheel, is this emotional one. Emotions play our emotional health is really, really important. What do we see in the newspapers all the day about mental health? Okay. And people being lonely and people suicide rate and all that kind of stuff. All of that is tied to what? Our emotional health. Well, again, we have to be purposeful about this and think about how this works. So let's talk about some of the things that go into that. So when we think about emotional, and when we think about emotional well-being, okay, is again, purpose, okay? So one of the foundations of that is people who have strong emotional backbone, or whatever you want to call it, they are able to deal with bad things. Have we noticed how there are some people, they get hit with a crisis, they didn't have any control over it, okay, it came, and yet they seem to rise from the ashes and be okay. And we have other people who seem to not be able to deal with even the smallest things, right? That's because it has to do with your emotional IQ and how you're going, and how strong that is. So when you think about this also, I think you need to think about something I call emotional deposits. Okay. So let's think about when you're dating. Okay, it has nothing to do with business. Okay, you're out there looking for the one. Okay, here we go. And you have a date, really nice. Okay, and you really like this person, and this person seems to really like you. And you find that this person likes tennis, and you find yourself signing up for tennis lessons. And this person really likes exotic food. So you find yourself, or cooking exotic food. So now you find yourself buying all kinds of cooking books to learn how to do this, right? We do this in young relationships because we want to be liked and we want to be loved. It's natural, right? And so we think we have all this stuff in common because we do all these things together. And then we get married. And then you're asked to go play tennis and you don't want to go play tennis. You have something better, something you'd rather do. Okay. You'd rather take a hike because you like nature. And you ask this other person, let's go on a hike. And they say, no, I don't do hiking. Don't we do tennis? Okay. And all of a sudden these things start happening, right? And we stop making deposits, emotional deposits in our person's life. We stop telling them we love you. We stop remembering important things. We stop. Well, this bank account, it's just like a bank account. In a bank account, we put money in. Then we also take money out of that account, do we not? You've heard the bank charges for overdrawn, right? Same thing happens in emotional bank accounts. Okay, when we put less in than we take out, the relationship becomes bankrupt. Okay. If any of you have children, I had this where I have the 3-year-old hanging on my leg. Okay, I've come home from 8 hours of work, 9 hours of work. I still have some things to do before I got to make dinner, got to, put in a load of laundry, do all of this kind of stuff. And this 3-year-old wants to tell me about their day. And I say, gee, Johnny, I'd love to hear it. Give me a minute. Okay, right after dinner. Well, now it's after dinner and I'm cleaning up and Johnny's still hanging on my leg. And now there's this movie I want to watch, or this thing I want to do, or this thing I have to do. And I say, well, Johnny, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I mean, how important what's the 3-year-old got to say? Okay, that won't wait. All right. If that happens too much, then we wonder why the 16-year-old, we say, Johnny is 16. Let's have a talk. And Johnny's too busy. Johnny's got things to do. Johnny's got friends to see. Because we haven't made enough emotional deposits. And then that causes all this other loss and all of this other stuff. So what are you doing every day to put emotional deposits in the lives of the people you care? What are you doing every day to help someone else? Why do you think I love to do consulting? Because after I have somebody say, oh, I never knew that, or this really helps, or, you made something different for me. How does that make me feel? It feels like I made a difference. They don't have to be big ones. You don't have to run the world. Okay. They can be small ones, but what are they? And you want to think about those things. Okay. So what's your plan, Stan? What are you going to start doing? Okay, to do these emotional deposits. Okay, next slide. So oftentimes we say we don't have time to do all of this. We have so many things to do. And Stephen Covey explains, he calls it sharpening this whole process, sharpening the saw. Okay. And the whole idea is, what are you going, it's all about preparation. You have to think about this stuff. Work-life balance takes time. How are you going to sharpen your saw? What are you going to do every day on those 4 things? So when you get ready to cut the tree and change the world, guess what you got going? You've got a basis for this. This is what gives you energy. Sometimes we say, I feel tired all of the time. And part of that is because we don't have this grounding in this piece. Okay. Any thoughts about that? Somebody talk to me. I feel so lonely here. No one? Okay. So
This is Samantha. Sorry. I'm just curious because, the reason that I'm taking this webinar today, and maybe someone who owns their own business can talk about it, but I am already, writing the business plan, already thinking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do this? And how am I going to balance it? And I'm wondering if people are already doing these things, or maybe they're here because they haven't found that balance. I'm just curious.
I'm curious to know too, because I think that's a really valid question, Samantha, because I think we've got 2 things going on here, right? It's you know what you're trying to do. Okay. But how many of you does anybody here have a master's degree in entrepreneurship? I'm just asking. Okay. I didn't. Okay. They didn't offer it. All right, now they're starting to offer it. I love when professors talk about entrepreneurship. They've never owned a business, and now they're going to talk about entrepreneurship. But anyway, pet peeve. But part of this, and this is what the SBDC provides, is they provide, you can talk to us as consultants, okay? But then also they offer classes to teach you how to do these things. Because I have people say all the time, I didn't know that. And I'm like, and you would know that because why? I found out starting out, I had a lot of background. I had a lot of skill sets in what I did for a living. Okay. But when we started out on our own, oh my gosh, I realized I didn't know what questions I was supposed to ask. And what was even worse, I didn't know what answers I should get, because I had no trusted source. And so part of your goal is to find trusted sources, okay? And to build relationships so that you don't make decisions without, some decisions need extra help. They're big. They have consequences, okay? Most of you have never started a business. Most of us, none of us do. We start as employees. Employees give us what? A job description. And it says, do this, this, and this, show up on a regular, I was in HR, show up in a regular, and most of the time, be nice to most of your coworkers and the customers, and guess what? We'll give you a raise next year. But stay in your box. Any of you who've ever tried to get out of your box and say to another department, you might want to think about doing X, probably got told to get back in your box. Okay. And then we hire people. I mean, when you look at what corporations do, which makes sense, they take a technician who's very good at their job and they promote them to management. How many of you have ever worked for a manager who never should have been promoted from their job? Happens all the time. And it's because, excuse me, it's because the company says they're doing a really good job. They're a great engineer. So therefore, we need to reward them and we're going to make them a manager, except the skill sets they needed as an engineer aren't the same skills they needed as a manager. They don't like people. And they got promoted because they do it the right way. So there's only one right way to do anything. And sometimes that causes friction. But none of us, not even CEOs of big companies, said, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to start it from scratch and I'm going to create all of it and I'm going to make all the decisions. Uh-oh, never done that. How do we do that? That's a whole nother education piece of its own. And think about the stressors you're adding to yourself because somehow you think you're supposed to know all the answers. It's okay not to know. None of us know everything. And sometimes we have that self-belief in our head that saying I somehow should know this. And the answer is why? Why? Why would you? When I worked at AAA, I never, ever, when I signed time cards for my staff, did I ever say, gee, I wonder if AAA's got enough money in the bank to pay for this. And yet we have staff. And I get calls from my business partner, Susie, or we did in the beginning, don't now, but we did in the beginning. And I would get a call from her and she would say, geez, payroll's in 5 days and we don't have enough money in the bank. Well, that meant two things. Either it's going to come out of our bank accounts, our personal bank accounts, because employees don't like IOUs, I've heard. Okay. And nor should they. And or I got to become Guido. And I got to call the clients who weren't paying on time. And I hate being Guido. Okay, it's not my gig. But I was forced to put myself in an uncomfortable position and do things I didn't want because I needed to take care of this. So part of this whole idea of running your business and doing all of that is jumping out of your comfort zone. And in reality, you're not jumping, you're leaping out of it. And it's okay. It's expected. What I will tell you is you probably won't die from it. Okay, so that's the good news. So, but if you don't have this resiliency piece, if you don't have this piece we're talking about here, what happens to the business? You get frustrated, you get afraid, you get very unsure of yourself. Sally or Sam self-doubt lives in your head big time. And you don't have the strength to tell them to shut up. And this is about that strength. This is about getting that strength. So let's talk about the next thing. So when we talk about time management, it's really you management. And that's what we've been talking about here. We've been talking about, it's often time management is I do this, 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 and this, right? I have activities. And that's really not what time management is. Time management is you focusing on the priorities. It's about you challenging you. It's about you making those decisions. So let's talk about this whole idea. So you guys are taking on a new business, starting a new business, you just added another stressor to your life. Okay, so let's talk about what happens with stress. So I'm going to give you some statistics here. 2/3 of doctors' office visits are for stress-related illness. Remember I said I had a life-changing moment in my 30s? That was that. I went to work one day. I parked the car. All of a sudden, my left side was paralyzed. I couldn't get out of the car. They called emergency. I spent 3 days in the hospital having tests. I started feeling better. And the doctor came to me and said, how's the stress level in your life? And it was here. But I said, oh, I'm doing just fine. And he said, no, you're not. And if you don't change some things, I hear, you've got a daughter that I'm, getting married or whatever it was. And here you want to be there. You want to do that. You want to see your grandkids. Yep. You need to change some things because stress was caused my left side to go numb. It wasn't a stroke. It felt like one, but it wasn't one. And it was all related to stress. Okay, so stress is a major contributing factor to coronary artery disease, and it's a contributing factor in multiple sclerosis and a lot of diabetes and a lot of those other things is caused by stress. So since it's such a killer, we need to find ways to relieve that. So next one. So, okay. So when you think about what it costs companies and what it costs us as a nation, it gets huge. Over $100 billion per year in medical costs. And I don't know when this was done. I'm sure it's more now. Okay. In medical costs, how much stress related is causing companies to have employees sick, right? Having to take a whatever day, right? Kind of thing. So absenteeism, burnout. How many people in the last year and a half have experienced burnout? Okay. This is where it comes from, right? And then even if we show up, we're less productive, right? We're busy, but we're less productive. And so how do we get around that? So it's not stress that kills us. It's our reaction to it. Because we can't prevent stress. It happens. There's deadlines. There's things that have to be done. Okay. How are we choosing to respond to those stressors? So it's not, how many of us treat a bunch of stuff like it's terminal? Oh my gosh, right? I mean, most of life is not terminal. And yet we treat every crisis like it's, or mini crisis, like it's terminal. I had one of those episodes this morning. Hannah knows that. Okay, woke up this morning, my email doesn't work, nothing was working. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this thing at 11 o'clock and I got to be there. And what if I'm not there? And oh my gosh, life ends. Okay. Well, as Hannah told me when we were talking at 9:45 this morning, isn't it a great thing that we're talking about this now, not 5 minutes to 11? I'm like, you're absolutely right. Okay, you're absolutely right. So Hannah was my stress reliever this morning because she convinced me she had everything in control like she always does. And I knew I had backup. What did that do to my stress level? Knowing I had backup. So you really need to let go of some things you can't control. So go to the next slide, Hannah. So think about what we think about circle of influence. Okay, so there's 3 parts. There's circle of control, circle of influence, and circle of concern. Okay. Circle of concern is everything out there that we can't change. Now, all of us have social media. And what gets put on social media about a lot of stuff we can't what? Change. And it sets the tone for our day. It sets the tone for how we feel. We worry about things we cannot change, or at least change today. The second one is the circle of influence. Those are where you can influence change. You personally can't make the change. How many of you had tried to influence family, friends, kids, parents, whatever, right? Now, I don't know about you guys. I now have adult children. I tried to influence things, but as adults, they do things that I personally think they should do something different. But how much influence do I have? Not much. Okay. I have influence, but I can't make the change. It's their responsibility. Okay. But yet, how much effort do we spend doing that? How much energy do we spend doing that? Where the energy really needs to come into that bottom one. I mean, this our top one, that circle of control. The things we can control. Well, what can we control in this life? This is depressing. Not much. Okay.
We can control our choices.
We can control, that's it. This is exactly where I'm going, Sarah. We can choose our response and how we choose to respond to everything that's going around us. We can choose how we're going to do things. We just have to be willing to accept the consequences, because again, every choice has consequences, and adjust accordingly. But in reality, we spend a great deal of our time worrying about things that we don't have a lot of control over. And that leaves less time to spend on what you can control. Okay. So I want you to start thinking about the things you really can control and the things that are out of your hands. And figuring out how you're going to spend more time in that smaller circle that you have greater impact on than those larger circles. Okay. So I'm going way back here. This is way before most of you were born. Okay. So President Eisenhower, he was our 34th president. He was also had successfully managed the Allied forces during World War II. We came out on the good side of that one. Okay. So he was a well-known statistician. He knew how to, one of the reasons he was put in charge of the Allied forces was he could get all of those generals who all had their own egos. Okay. He put them in their place or got them to work together. One of the two. Okay. And that was a huge undertaking because you were dealing with a bunch of different countries, a bunch of different egos, and they all had ideas. And he was able to make that happen. And he did it because, it was an amazing individual. One of the things he said was, what is important is seldom urgent, and what seems urgent is seldom important. So now we're going to start talking about time management, because we need to focus. We can't treat everything like it's urgent. And yet often we do. And yet we don't take time to plan things. We don't take time. We don't take, when I say business planning to a lot of people, guess what happens to their eyes? Oh gosh, they just glaze over and I get these blank looks, right? And it's like, I don't want to do that. I just want to sell. I just want to do this. I just want to help people. I just want to whatever. And I want you to too. But can you imagine if Eisenhower ran the Allied forces like that? Okay, so think about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. So this whole idea of urgent versus important. Effective time management understands the difference. Okay, so we tend to be very bad at figuring that out. We get really confused. How many of you are having and have had the experience where you've been having an in-depth conversation with a friend about something that's very important to you, and the phone rings and they stop and answer the phone? How does that make you feel? Right? But that phone to them felt what? Urgent. That it needed to be answered. And that's what that response is how we get confused about what those are. It's this whole idea of it has to be done now, right? It's a crisis. And we treat everything like it's terminal or a crisis. And that doesn't allow us to do all of this planning. Okay. So any of you have ever done any marketing? Marketing, how many people would do marketing? First thing we think about is I got to do all my social media, right? I got to figure out what I'm going to do on Facebook, what I'm going to do on Instagram, whatever it is. No, that's not the first thing. The first thing is your plan. Who's your target market? Who needs you? How are you going to speak to them? Okay. And when it comes to social media, if you're on any more than 3, you're all over the place. You need to go where your person lives. Where does your person hang out? If that's in networking groups, where do you need to be? Networking groups, not on Instagram. Okay. You need to find out where you need to be. But we need to really go back to this whole idea. And this is time management. So people who are in crisis management think everything is a crisis, and they treat it so. Everything ends up in one bucket. Okay. So it crowds out everything else. Go back to the screen before, Hannah.
This one?
Yeah, the one before.
Oh.
No, there should be one in between. Is there not one in between?
There's the quadrants, and then there's the crisis management.
Huh, I don't know why it showed up on my screen. I have no idea. We'll no worries. Okay, so the reason to look at this.
Oh, sorry, Nancy, I muted you. I meant to mute myself. Nancy, you're muted.
Okay, she took me out of the picture. How's that for control? Okay, so there's 4 quadrants. There's urgent and unimportant. I don't know where that slide share went. It's urgent and important. That's gotta have it done. There's not urgent, but still important. And then there's not important and urgent. And then there's not urgent and not important. Okay. So we want to look at how we're spending our time. So in the one that is that top quadrant, that's urgent and important. If your house is burning down, that's urgent and important. That takes precedent over everything else. Okay, you must deal with it. Okay. But in reality, how many crises do we have like that? Hopefully not too many. But if we treat everything like it's an emergency, like it's crisis, what happened to that bucket? It got really full. And that causes a problem. Okay. So when you think about this, it's like the next piece, oh, she's on. So the next piece is not urgent and important. That's all planning. That's all strategy. That's setting up what I plan to do today. That's working, and from a business standpoint, that's working on your business strategically. Okay, that's all the things that take work. Okay, if it's in a relationship, that's all the things we talked about, those emotional deposits and all of that, that's there. Okay, is important. Okay, it's not urgent, but it's important because it's long-term. When you think about urgent and not important, those are things that you can delegate. Those are things that you can get an app to do. Those are things that those of you who own businesses and you are now responsible for doing your accounting, your marketing, your everything. Eventually, maybe not in the beginning, but eventually you're going to need to delegate some of that if you're not very good at it. So one of the companies we own two companies. One's an entrepreneurial training company and one is an accounting company. The accounting company was the first one. I'm not an accountant, so no QuickBooks questions here. Okay. However, the clients we work with all the time is they tried to do it on their own, and guess what happened? It didn't get done, or it didn't get done right. And so they can't figure out what's happening with their business. And so you have two choices. You're either going to learn how to do it, okay, or you're going, and in all cases, you have to learn how to understand it. In financials, you're going to have to learn to understand financials. You may not do it, but you got to learn it. Because even if you outsource, you've got to manage it. Okay. So, so delegate what you can't do when you get to that piece. Okay. And then how much time do we spend in this category? And this category is not urgent and not important. I call this my Netflix binge. Okay. When I've had enough and I do whatever and I say, I'm not going, you know, I don't, it's snowing outside and I say, okay, I'm going to stay warm. I'm going to stay with the electric blanket and I'm going to watch all the past episodes of Dexter. I don't know, whatever it is. Okay. So think about what you're doing there and how you can move that time to what category? That top right category. Okay, that's going to take you there. So here's the percentages. This is how you should be spending your time. Quadrant 1, those are crises. How many things, because we didn't plan for it, became a crisis? Right? It moved in that category because we didn't take care of it in quadrant 2. So what are they? You want to spend most of your time in quadrant 2, in the planet piece. In quadrant 3, we're talking 15%. In quadrant 4, this is a tough one. 1%. I really did like Dexter. Okay, and I'm not saying that you don't get to watch TV. I'm saying, or do whatever. But figure out for you guys, especially as you're making this change, where your time is most valuable spent. And that's where you spend your time. Okay? This takes practice. This takes really sitting down and looking at what you do every day. Write down what you do. Start tracking your time. and just find out where you're spending your time for a couple of days. It can be very revealing, because then you're going to start understanding, why am I not being as productive as I would like? Why is it not happening? So I want you to really think about where you spend your time. And the best way to do it is to do a time diary. Don't judge yourself. Do any of you find yourself, you're working on something and then you get on your phone and you're on some social media for a bit and you go, oh, geez, there went 30 minutes. Lovely dog pictures, but what did I really get from it, right? So think about where you're spending your time. Are you on your business? Are you spending time figuring out who you want to be, what your long-term goal is? One of the questions I always ask people in a consulting question is, what do you want this business to do for you? And primarily in that meeting, I ask financially. So if you say, I want this business to someday bring to me $100,000 or $150,000 to me in my bank account, I have to design a business that can actually do that. Because otherwise I have a very expensive hobby. I know a lot of people who own a business who work very, very hard. And at the end of the year, they would actually do better working at McDonald's. Is that something any of you want to sign up for? Then that takes what? That takes planning. That takes know-how. That takes, and you have to get really clear about what your risk factor is. How much are you willing to risk? And when I say risk, I'm not talking just about money. Money, certainly, but time and energy and effort. How much time do you have to do this? How are you going to make time to do this? Because again, you got those 24 hours. So are you going to have to give up some things temporarily that maybe you haven't had to do in the past? Okay, make the adjustment. What do you need to learn to make this happen? We can help you with that, but guess who has to do all the work? Okay, so also understand, and I think this is really important, you're never, ever, ever get to the point where you don't have to do this. Okay, we kind of think, well, once we get it started, everything will be wonderful. And Hannah's heard me say this ad nauseum, but I tell people this all the time. I said, I don't care what your middle name, the name your mother gave you as a middle name. It's now pivot. Because even when you plan, guess what happens? Stuff. Some of the stuff you can control and some you can't. Okay. How are you going to react? And I have discovered in working with people for the last year and a half through the pandemic and all the things that it caused for some business, especially some particular businesses. The ones that I work a lot with restaurants, and I had the people who said, I'm just going to wait for it to get better. I'll wait it out. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to wait it out. And then others who said, I'm going to have to adapt. So now I'm going to have takeout and delivery. I never had that before. We're a community restaurant. And those who did adapt, most of the ones I work with are in better shape than they were before the pandemic. So always think about how are you going to spend your time? You want to spend your time on things that add value to you, things that add value to your business, things that add value to you personally, things that add value to your family, whoever is important to you. Okay. Where are you going to spend your time? You choose. That's the great part. And again, that's the scary part. You choose. Because, and if there's anybody in your life car, in the driver's seat, you might want to rethink that. And you might want to say, please get your own car and you can drive along with me on this life journey. Okay. But I'm driving my car as they should drive theirs. You can choose the path together, but it needs to be incongruent, which also brings up the fact that when you start a business, most of you don't start it by yourself. So if you have a significant other, or changes are going to have to be made in family finance or any of that kind of stuff for you to do all this, think about who needs to all be on the same path. Okay, because if it doesn't happen, it causes issues. The other thing you will find, and some of you probably already found out, that sometimes our family and friends don't quite get why we're being so crazy and are worried that we're going to do this and it doesn't work out and we're turning out a good job, whatever it is. Because most of us, again, are employees. And most people say, well, just get a job. That's security. Well, if we haven't figured out that's not security by now, I don't even know what to say. Okay. But we think it. That's how we were taught. And so by you flying on your own, sometimes family and friends look at you as you're a Icarus jumping off with bad wings. Okay. And so there are some family that they just can't get behind it. And it's okay. You can still love them. You just don't talk to them about this. It's okay. Okay. It's not because they don't love you. Okay. What I will also say to you is if you want to reduce your stress level, is find people who are like you. Find people who are starting businesses. Find people who are trying, it has nothing to do with what you're doing. It's the fact that you're starting a business. What you will find, this is what I found, is I have a certain group of people that I know, I call them business champions, but there's a certain group of people that I can call. There was times, especially early on, I didn't want to tell my husband the contract didn't go through, or because I've been talking about it ad nauseum and it didn't go through. I didn't want to talk about it. And he's very supportive. But it just didn't feel right. So I have other people, I pick up the phone and I say, John, you got a minute? And John, I had a really bad day. And John always had a minute. And the reason he always had a minute is because he knew if he called me and said, Nancy, I've had a really bad day. Can you got a minute to talk? I always had that time. Find those relationships. Those can be exceedingly important to you. So, in closing, last slide, girl. Never get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. Because really that's what counts in the end. So get clear on what's urgent and what's not urgent. Reduce everything's a crisis to a plan as much as you can. And tip the scale. Tip the scale in your favor. Be a friend to yourself. Forgive yourself when you make a mistake. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. and we compare ourselves to people on Facebook. Nothing drives me more crazy when I see a guy laying on a Corvette in front of a mansion and he's saying, please take this 2-hour seminar for X amount of money and this life could be yours. I'm like, please get real. This takes work. At the SBDC, we'll help you with that work, but you're in charge. So that's for today. Any questions, any thoughts? What have you learned today or found value?
This is Samantha. I like the idea of doing a time audit. Not just the time, during a business day, but just personally too, because I think that's part of the worry is that I don't have enough time, but I think I do. I just need to adapt the way
It's about allocation,
Mhm.
right? It's just about allocation of time. And so I think that figuring, and again, we don't realize how much time I get. If you think, gosh, this is a fight all the time. Yeah, I go through periods where I'm awesome, and I go through other periods I'm a mess. Okay. And that's okay. You just know that it's time to get back on the horse again, right? Kind of thing. You fell off. Okay, fine. No broken bones, move forward, right? And so, but it's I don't know anybody that's perfect at this. I've never met them. And things will throw us off. Okay. Other thoughts besides Samantha? Somebody talk to me.
I was going to say that obviously I have been through the Stephen Covey program, so it's a good reminder now that I'm not doing what I was doing when I went through it. So, reapplying, reassessing kind of things. The other thing that, really hits home for me is that I don't remember where I saw it, but when I left my career, I had 10 employees. And, 8-hour day does not mean 8 hours of productive work. It's about 6. Okay. And then translating that into coming into owning your own business and trying to say, okay, I can't do an 8-hour day because 8 hours is not possible. Plus you're doing all different kinds of things. So you're like rapidly switching. You're not task oriented the whole time. So, learning how to go with the flow and realize that, today might be a really long day, but tomorrow might be a really short day. And that's okay. But I like, I think just reiterating some of the things and then really just writing down the 4 tires and really kind of, I have something in all 4 of them that actually matches. So, that's kind of a place to kind of start. And
it's kind of like the foundation piece, right? And then things, spring from there. The other thing I've learned is oftentimes, we're asked as small business owners to, we tell people all the time, what are your sales projections? And people look at us with that glazed look. Like, how am I supposed to figure out sales projections when I haven't even started selling anything? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Okay. Well, no. Okay. So if you're a consultant or you're doing work where you produce anything, you have to look at, I have people say, I'm a marketing consultant. I want to be a marketing consultant. And I say, that's great. And then I say, how much are you going to charge? And they say, well, I'm new at this, so I'm going to charge $60 an hour. I say, okay, fine. And then I say, how much money do you want to make a year? And they say, well, I want to make $150,000 a year. I can do numbers. Okay. There's 168 hours a week. Okay. And that is not all spent billable hours. No. So I want you to think about that. Okay. Is how much time is spent running the business and how much time is there to do business, if that makes sense to you. Okay, because it's that billable work, okay, that brings the revenue. But if you don't do the other stuff, guess what you don't get?
Business.
Billable work. Okay, so how much time? So if it's a 40 hours, just use 40 hours, which in my life is funny, but if you just say 40 hours, okay, is if 15 of it minimum have to be used to build the business, that means you only have 25 hours, and that means you're booked every week. Is that going to take you where you need to go? Are you charging the right amount? What are your competitors charging? Why are they getting this and you're not? Why are people choosing them and not you? Those are all questions that have to be answered. So there was some questions in the chat too.
Michelle asked if you have any networking groups you might suggest to meet other entrepreneurs.
I would join, like, there's a lot of Facebook groups, like, you know, I belong to a couple that are like Women Helping Women Entrepreneurs is one, and they've got, like, I don't know, worldwide, they've got 300, 400,000 members. It's huge. Okay. But there's all kinds of different specific groups, like on LinkedIn, you can find networking groups that may have to do with your industry. Okay. Find like-minded individuals and find groups that spend more time helping each other than advertising what they do, if that makes sense. Okay, because I think this is me personal, I think you have to be a giver first, but that's just me. Okay, so think about finding, like, it's about, you have to search for them, finding like-minded individuals. Okay, and people who are interested in helping each other.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, there's just another comment also about how helpful the percentages of the quadrants are. So
Say that again. I'm sorry, Hannah, it's hard for me to hear you. What?
Oh, there was just a comment about how helpful knowing the percentages of the different quadrants is.
Where do you need to, you know, and you're not going to be perfect. You guys aren't running a time clock, but you get a sense of it, right? And this is really about investment, not spending. Okay, if you spend that bank account, it's all gone. If you invest, the idea of investing, the reason for investing is to what? Get more. And that's what you want to be able to do.
Great.
But investing often doesn't pay off when? Right away. And that's what makes it hard, because you don't see, oftentimes you don't see results right away, right? And so we get tired of investing. So the idea is, how do I invest in the right spots? And then how do I develop this thing called patience? And what is reasonable? Because then you get to the point where you say, well, that investment's not paying out. I need to what? Maybe pull what I've got left in there and invest it someplace else. This is about really understanding your business, your numbers, but most importantly, it's about understanding you. Any other questions?
Those are all our questions for now, and I know we're just about at our time. So if any of you do have other questions, you can always reach out to us through our website or our email. It's North Metro SBDC at frontrange.edu, and I will be sending out the email summary later this afternoon with all the content as well. It looks like you have something else, Nancy.
And then on that first slide, I put our website. Okay, our personal business website. Check in with us. We put stuff out there to help people all the time. So
yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. This has been so helpful. A lot of really great info. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds like a deal. Okay, you guys go do. And here's the pattern: don't let anyone tell you you can't do this. Okay, ever. All right. Good luck. Let's make it happen.